So this is the part two of the chapter, the interview. In the first part, we saw the article wherein the author has expressed the views related to interview, what people think, especially the celebrities. Now, the second part is an excerpt from an actual interview of a very famous writer, Umberto Eco. I am a professor who writes novels on Sundays. Umberto Eco. The following is an extract from an interview of Umberto Eco. The interviewer is Mukund Padmanabhan from The Hindu. Umberto Eco, a professor at the University of Bologna in Italy, had already acquired a formidable reputation as a scholar for his ideas on semiotics, the study of science. Maybe you remember that famous movie, Da Vinci Code, where the main character is a professor of semiotics who goes on studying various science. So, he had acquired a formidable reputation as a scholar for his ideas on semiotics, literary interpretation, and medieval aesthetics before he turned to writing fiction. Literary fiction, academic texts, essays, children's books, newspaper articles, his written output is staggeringly large and wide ranging. In 1980, he acquired the equivalent of intellectual superstardom with the publication of The Name of the Rose, which sold more than 10 million copies. Now, this Name of the Rose, which uh, published in 1980, it made him a known name. Apart from being a great scholar, he was now known as a wonderful novelist. And this Name of the Rose has also been turned into a movie. This novel sold around 10 million copies. Now we are coming to the interview. The interviewer is Mukund Padmanabhan. Mukund. The English novelist and academic David Lodge once remarked, I can't understand how one man can do all the things he does. Now, David Lodge once remarked that, Mukund says that David Lodge once remarked that he can't understand how he, that is Eco, Umberto Eco, can do all so many things. So Umberto Eco's reply was, maybe I give the impression of doing many things, but in the end I am convinced I am always doing the same thing. So Mukund asked, which is it? What do you think? You are considering it to be the same thing. Ah, now that is more difficult to explain. I have some philosophical interest and I pursue them through my academic work and my novels. He says that he has some philosophical interest and he pursues them through his academic work, that is scholarly work, as well as his novels. Even my books for children are about non-violence and peace. You see, the same bunch of ethical philosophical interests. And then I have a secret. Did you know what will happen if you eliminate the empty spaces from the universe, eliminate the empty spaces in all the atoms? The universe will become as big as my fist. He says that the whole universe is full of space, empty space. If we remove that empty space, the size of the universe will be just like a fist. Similarly, we have a lot of empty spaces in our lives. I call them interstices. He says that in the same fashion, in the same manner, we have lots of empty spaces in our lives. And Umberto says that he calls them interstices. And then he gives the example. Say you are coming over to my place. You are in an elevator. And while you are coming up, I am waiting for you. This is an interstice, an empty space. I am waiting for you. You are coming. That is the period where I am not doing anything. That is empty space. I work in empty spaces. While waiting for your elevator to come up from the first to the third floor, I have already written an article. He laughs at his own little joke. That's actually what is his point. He says that there are lots of empty spaces in our life. If we evaluate the time we spend, we'll see that there are certain parts of that 24 hours where we are actually doing nothing. That is what is called as empty space. And he says that he utilizes that empty space, and that's why he is able to do so much. So Mukund says, not everyone can do that, of course. Your non-fictional writing, your scholarly work has a certain playful and personal quality about it. It is a marked departure from a regular academic style, which is invariably depersonalized and often dry and boring. So he says that, okay, fine, you're in the fictional writing, okay, there is a different way of writing. But in the non-fictional writing, that is research paper and scholarly works, it also has certain playful and personal quality. And it is a marked departure, a very visible departure from the regular academic style. And what is that regular academic style? Which is depersonalized and often it is dry and boring, and that's why people don't prefer it. So he puts up the question, have you consciously adopted an informal approach, or is it something that just come naturally to you? So have you adopted this, or it is your natural style that even the scholarly works you present in them certain playful and personal quality in it? Eco replies, when I presented my first doctoral dissertation in Italy, one of the professors said, scholars learn a lot of certain subject, then they make a lot of false hypotheses, and then they correct them, and at the end they put the conclusion. Now generally, how the thesis is written. So a thesis, a research work, firstly the scholars, they learn, they collect the material, they learn a lot of that particular subject. Then false hypotheses are made, and these hypotheses are corrected, and at the end the conclusion is put. That is the regular way of writing a thesis. That is the regular way of doing a research. But his professor commented that you, on the contrary, told the story of your research. You have taken a different style. You have written the story of your research, even including your trials and errors. At the same time, he recognized I was right and went on to publish my dissertation as a book, which meant he appreciated it. At that point, at the age of 22, I understood scholarly books should be written the way I had done, by telling the story of research. So he says that it was that age of 22 he understood, and he felt that even the scholarly book should be written in the way that he has adopted, telling the story of the research. This is why my essays always have a narrative aspect. He says that this is the reason his essays have that storytelling aspect in it. And this is why probably I started writing narratives, that is novels, so late, at the age of 50, more or less. And maybe he never felt like, because he was already using that style of narration in his scholarly work, and maybe that was the reason he started writing so late. I remember that my dear friend Roland Barthes was always frustrated that he was an essayist and not a novelist. He wanted to do creative writing one day or another, but he died before he could do so. He says that his very close friend Roland Barthes was always frustrated because he was an essayist and not a novelist. He wanted to do some creative writing, but he could not, and he died. I never felt this kind of frustration. I started writing novels by accident. I had nothing to do one day, and so I started. Novels probably satisfy my taste for narration. He says that he already has that taste for narration. Novels are just an element to satisfy that taste for narration. Then Mukund comes up with the next question. Talking about novels, from being a famous academic, you went on to become spectacularly famous after the publication of The Name of the Rose. You have written 5 novels against many more scholarly works of non-fiction, at least more than 20 of them. So Eco corrects him. He says that not more than 20 of them, over 40. Mukund is surprised, over 40. Among them, a seminal piece of work on semiotics, a very important work on semiotics. But ask most people about Umberto Eco and they will say, oh, he is a novelist. Does that bother you? You are well known for your scholarly works, and especially you have worked so much upon semiotics. But ask anyone today, and everyone knows you as a novelist. Does that trouble you? Now, here I remember one instance when our former president, Dr. APJ, he was asked by someone that how would you like yourself to be remembered? As a president or as a scientist? So he had come up with a reply that he is a scientist who became a president. So maybe same thing is over here. Umberto Eco, of the great scholar, but people know him because of that famous novel as a novelist. So Mukund asks, does that bother you? Does that trouble you? Umberto Eco is very frank in the answer. He says, yes. Because I consider myself a university professor who writes novel on Sundays. Who writes novel on Sundays means who writes novel when he is free. It's not a joke. I participate in academic conferences and not meetings of pen clubs and writers. I identify myself with the academic community. He says that he considers himself to be a scholar. He identifies himself with the academic community. But okay, if they, that is most of the people, have read only the novels. I know that by writing novels I reach a larger audience. I cannot expect to have 1 million readers with stuff on semiotics. He says that, but it is natural. Through novel, I reach a large number of audience. I cannot expect to have 1 million readers with stuff on semiotics. So naturally, the thing which more people are related to, they would remember in that manner. So his novel has a bigger reach, and so he is known as a novelist by most of the people rather than a scholar. Mukund. Which brings me to my next question. The Name of the Rose is a very serious novel. It's a detective yarn at one level, but it also delves into metaphysics, theology, and medieval history. Yet it enjoyed a huge mass audience. Were you puzzled at all by this? So he comes to the novel. He says that Name of the Rose is a very serious novel. On one hand, it has some detective element in it, but it also goes into metaphysics, that is supernatural and all that, theology, religion, medieval history. It covers such serious topics. But then also it enjoyed a huge mass audience. It was a super hit novel. Did that puzzle him? Umberto Eco? No. Journalists are puzzled, and sometimes publishers. The journalists are puzzled. The publishers are also sometimes puzzled that how such a serious novel can become such a hit. And why this is? And this is because journalists and publishers believe that people like trash and don't like difficult reading experiences, because it is a general feeling that people don't enjoy difficult reading experiences. They only go for something which is non-serious, which is a trash, which is just anything. And people don't enjoy difficult reading experiences. Consider there are 6 billion people on this planet. The Name of the Rose sold between 10 and 15 million copies. So in a way, I reached only a small percentage of readers. But it is exactly these kind of readers who don't want easy experiences, or at least don't always want this. I myself at 9 p.m. after dinner watch television and want to see either Miami Vice or Emergency Room. I enjoy it and I need it, but not all day. Yes, what he wants to say through it? He wants to say through it that he also enjoys non-serious things. He enjoys it, he needs it. But one should not come to the conclusion that he only likes those things. And that is what is how the people make conclusion, feeling that majority of the people, they don't like this serious reading experiences. Well, they read non-serious things, but that does not mean that people don't enjoy serious writings or serious topics or serious novels. Mukund. Could the huge success of the novel have anything to do with the fact that it dealt with a period of medieval history? So he says that, what do you think? What was the reason behind the success of this novel? Because it dealt with the medieval history or something like that? Umberto Eco says, that's possible, maybe, one of the reasons. But let me tell you another story, because I often tell stories like a Chinese wise man. My American publisher said while she loved my book, she didn't expect to sell more than 3,000 copies in a country where nobody has seen a cathedral or studies Latin. The American publisher, uh, she loved the book, but she did not expect to sell more than 3,000 copies because in that country where people don't know about the cathedrals or they have ever studied Latin. And that was the reason Umberto Eco says, I was given an advance for 3,000 copies. But in the end, it sold 2 or 3 million in the US, which was a real surprise for everyone. A lot of books have been written about the medieval past before mine. I think the success of the book is a mystery. Nobody can predict it. It says that why the book becomes a success, it can never be speculated. It can never be confirmed by saying that okay, book will become a success. Why it became successful? Nobody can predict it. I think if I had written the name of the rose 10 years earlier or 10 years later, it wouldn't have been the same. Why it worked at that time is a mystery. He says that he also does not have a definite answer that why his book became a success. Maybe the different areas that it covered, the medieval history, the detective yarn in it, maybe there could have been many factors. But which was the actual factor, that cannot be pinpointed. And that's why he says that if you would have written it 10 years earlier or he would have written it 10 years later, whether the book would have enjoyed the same success, one can't say. Why it became successful is a mystery to him. Similarly, we can see about the movies and all that same theme movie made some 10 years back was not a success. But 10 years later, the same theme movie made and become successful. So success of a book, success of a movie is quite unpredictable. And that is what Umberto Eco says, that it may be a possible reason that it dealt with the medieval history. But whether it was the only thing behind it cannot be pinpointed to. And here we come to the end of this chapter, the interview.